Hi, I'm Helen Harrison, LAA President. Welcome to the February 2021 Virtual Member Program. We'll be meeting like this for a few months at least until we conquer COVID and we're able to meet again in person. So thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy what we have to offer.
Hi, I would like to welcome all of our new members for 2021. I would also like to thank our loyal members who have renewed their membership for another year. Your membership enables us to provide the programs and services that help us all improve our artistic skills, show off our best work, and bring us together for fellowship and mutual support. Our organization helps create a thriving visual arts culture in the communities we serve. In addition to the financial support provided by your dues, I would also like to thank you for the time and talents that you contribute by volunteering to help with our shows, our workshops, and on the various committees and teams that keep this organization running smoothly. The benefits we gain from membership in this organization are a direct result of the efforts we put into it. Now especially, as we rebuild the programs we had to put on hold due to the pandemic, we need your help. We need a wide range of skills to do what we do. There are plenty of opportunities for you to do the things you enjoy the most or that give you the ability to showcase your talents. Our volunteers often tell us that working together on a team with like-minded people gives them great satisfaction. Whether it is just for a few hours or for the longer term, please consider helping out in a way that's best for you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sheila Fossen,
And I'm Cheryl Townsend.
and we're here to tell you about the Louisville Art Association Member Show. The dates are April 15th to the 18th, 2021, and our judge is Martin Lambeth.
Oh, we're really excited to have him back. He was our fall judge for Fall Show 2020, and we're looking forward to working with him again.
Absolutely. So remember, all this information is on the LAA website. Complete your registration online, or you can mail it in, your signed registration form. It's $25. It needs to be in by April the 5th, and you have to be an active member of LAA with your dues paid up for 2021. You need to volunteer for 2 show-related activities, and you can sign up for those on the signup.com at the LouisvilleArt.org website.
And remember those important dates. Deadline for registration is April 5th, so get your registrations in. And remember, we'll be checking in art on Wednesday the 14th, and the show runs from Thursday the 15th through Sunday the 18th. So we are looking forward to seeing everyone's art for the spring show.
Can't wait to see it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sandy Price, and I am new on the board of directors for Louisville Art Association, and I am your treasurer. I do watercolors, some woodworking, arts and crafts, photography. I'm married to a wonderfully tolerant man, Dave, who's just great. And we have 5 kids who are all married, 9 grandchildren, and they all live close by, so I do a lot of little kid arts and crafts now too. I am learning video. I'm a baby videography wannabe, and I am appealing to you, the members of LAA, for some help. Those of you who have video experience and are a videographer, we need some help just to get all this together so that we can bring you more demonstrations and more workshops online while we're still in this COVID period and in person. hopefully very soon. We do have the spring member show. You need to go to louisvilleart.org and get your artwork. See there how to get your artwork in the spring member show. I've been chicken to submit any artwork before, but I just need to get over that and pick something out and put it in there, and I encourage you to do the same. I want to applaud the board of directors in 2020. They've all had to learn so many new things between Zoom and video and trying to get things together to bring you, our members, more workshops and demos and figure out how to do all that and keep art alive. That's what it's all about, is keeping art alive. It's so important. So I look forward to seeing your artwork in the spring member show, and hopefully in person sometime this year in 2021. God bless you all. Bye.
Hi all, I'm Lynn Sarkis, VP for the LAA, and also I am the board liaison for shows. And I just wanted to catch you up on a few things that are going on, and I'm going to have to put on my glasses because I can't see my notes without them. So the spring member show is online, and you can sign up for it by mail-in or through the online process. Sheila Fawson and Cheryl Townsend are the co-chairs, and they have a little video that you will see during this member show video. So look for their video, and they'll get you up to date on what's happening with that show. The NPS show, the National Photo Show, is also up and running. It's accepting applications. I believe that they will have a video also, and they are running strong. Be sure to look for their information and encourage anyone to apply for that show. Then the theme show this year, which will run in July, we do have co-chairs for that. It's Kim Roller, Jane Elvins, Camille Platt, and Annie Liggett. And that sounds like a great group of people. Kind of wish I had signed up to be co-chair on that. But what they need is suggestions for the theme show. And I know enough members to know that you all have an opinion, and so you should be letting us know what you think would be a good theme show topic. So you can just email any of those people or any of the co-chairs, or you can email the LAA Member shows email and let us know what you think would be a good theme. The National Fine Arts Show has a chair, Dawn Hendricks. She could use a co-chair, so anybody out there willing to step up and help Dawn, she's a really good person to work with, and it would be a fun experience. Where we're lacking is for the fall show. We have a new member who has tentatively agreed to do the be a co-chair. So hopefully she'll be able to commit to that. But we still need another person. So anybody who's willing to come forward and help us out with that. Teamwork is great, and it's a good chance to meet people, and it's a fun experience, especially the fall show because it has the crafts, and by that time we should hopefully be able to actually meet. So looking forward to that. Where we're needing volunteers is for our check-in and check-out processes for shows. We need a coordinator just to keep track of the sign-in and sign-out. So anybody interested in doing that, let us know. You can contact me at lynsarkis@iCloud or send a message through the website or through the LAA Member shows. We also need coordinators for the national show for the shipping committee. That's mainly just unpacking art and keeping track of all of the paperwork that goes along with that. If you're interested in doing that, let me know. We also could use a coordinator for the sign up. That would be entering volunteer information or volunteer slots into the sign up. I guess it's an application, but into that program so that people can sign up for volunteers for the show. And that's all we need for that. And hopefully this is pretty clear, but let us know if you need more information or have questions. Happy to answer any questions you have, and would love for you to volunteer. Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye.
On the National Fine Arts Show in September 4th through September 12th. The judge this year is Sherry Farball. The call for entry will be open on the cafe site in about a month. There'll also be information on the LAA webpage and Facebook, and I encourage you to check them often for updates related to the show. The deadline is July 9th, and I look forward to seeing you and your artwork in September.
Hi, I'm Chris Nagy. I'm the chair for the National Photography Show for 2021. I'm encouraging you to enter if you're a photographer. You can enter up to 6 images in this show, but you've got to enter by March 30th. There are some great prizes from our wonderful sponsors, Duraplaque and Mike's Camera. We've got over $6,500 in prizes, and it's growing. If you're not a photographer, want to check out the show is going to be May 28th through June 6th. And guess what? We're still going to have to wear these. But maybe in 2022 it'll be different. So again, if you've got an image you want to share with us, bring it in and enter by March 30th. The entry information is on our website, and please enter. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce our workshop presenter, Lael Har. Lael is a local artist who creates amazing acrylic paintings filled with vibrant color and texture. Her inspiration comes from nature and the study of healing arts. She often paints wet on wet with big brushes, palette knives, and spatulas, allowing the viewer to experience the energy of every stroke that's applied. Her process of painting is intuitive and guided by the moment-to-moment aliveness experienced in the dance of creating. Since 2009, Lael has operated her own gallery and studio in Boulder. Her award-winning artwork is included in collections around the country, and she has participated in numerous art festivals, open studios, and museum shows. She teaches numerous art workshops, inspiring others to find their creative voice through art. Here's Lael.
So just a quick note that all of my workshops to become a better artist or to be more satisfied in creating art and being proud and happy with your work takes growing 2 things. One of them is skills, which is a bulk of what we're doing today. And the other thing is your own intuition, your own artistic intuition. So looking at my photo, I take a moment to see what it is I like about this photo. Why did I pick this? Because if you connect kind of the sensual, it could be sensual part of yourself with what you're looking at, then that's going to show up in your painting. I was going to say sensory, but I do look at aspens and think it's very sensual. So I'm going to squint at this photo. And in the squinting, what happens is that big shapes emerge. The smallest details fall away. And what I see is big value shapes, right? The big shapes of yellow, the shapes in the sky, the shapes of the mountains, the shape of the trees, big shapes. So that's what I'm going to draw in my first square. I'm going to find these big shapes. And all those leaves and all those trees merge together into one shape, right? There is the understanding of what I'm looking at, and then there is the pure seeing. And what we want to develop is seeing as an artist, and not just, I understand it's a tree and it has a million leaves and that's the way I have to paint it, but what do I see here? And that's more honest and true to nature. What do I see? And it also allows for my unique point of view to come through. So I'm seeing these dark values on the trees. And part of seeing is feeling, because our seeing is not ever really purely objective, right? So I, as an artist, as the designer, I get to make choices of what's important to me. And what's important to me is that the glittering leaves. So I want to find those big shapes. Big shapes. That was quick. That was less than a minute. And once I have the big shapes, I can go back and find a little bit of smaller shapes within that. So maybe there's a mass here. That's all the leaves makes a mass. But within that, I see some value changes, some smaller shapes, dark to light. I actually have this photo. I'm going to share it just so you can see what I'm pointing at. Of course, you're looking at your own photo. I do that through screen sharing. Here it is. That's what I'm looking at. Some of the paper is peeled. I already have some paint on it. But you can see as I'm squinting, right, there's this faraway shape of the hills. There's the dark shape of the trees are really dark. So I assign these shapes, or I draw out the outline of these, some of these shapes. And I have two squares because I want to give you an opportunity to maybe do it again. Maybe you want to adjust something, move a tree, crop a side of it. It's up to you as a designer how you want to put this together. Using this as the inspiration, as the learning of how do trees look in nature and grass with these leaves. And once you have a basic drawing, we're going to start assigning value. So tonal value is dark to light, black to white, and everything in between. So I have my value chart here, black to white. And in this photograph, I see that I have really dark areas, some almost white areas, and everything in between. But with charcoal, I can maybe get around 4 value range. I'm going to show you what that might look like. The darkest is as hard as I can press with my charcoal or whatever your drawing utensil is. The lightest is the light of the paper. And then I've got a mid-dark and a mid-light. And I want to assign each one of these shapes a value. So this takes comparing the values. So the trees, are they the darkest piece here? And then I can compare it to other dark elements in the shadows of the trees and see what is the darkest element. So I'm going to again share the screen, but this time, well, let's see, this time I have, oh, I put this in black and white, but now I don't see that. Okay, let's see. I can change that real quick. It's all right, while you're working, I can adjust it to black and white so you can see the values easily. Maybe. Maybe not. So go ahead and do that with your photo. So that means I can take anything external, run it through this particular, nervous system, and express it the more I lean towards my experience as I express it, the more abstract it's going to be. So anything you look at can be abstracted. The more complex, the more interesting the abstraction can be. But if you're just starting out in understanding abstraction, then you probably want to work with something a little simpler. But this is the process. This is a complex photo. It has foreground, middle ground, background. It has a million leaves and a million colors. And the process of simplifying into big shapes is the first step towards creating abstract art. So I'm finding these big shapes. I'm designating value. And I'm comparing dark to light. What do I assign when I squint? What should be assigned as the darkest value? There's a shape here. There's a shape here. There's a shape here. And if you do this, and when you're done, stand back and tell me if it looks like an abstract painting or abstract art. What's the mid value? Now, oftentimes, yellow, the highly saturated color, in this case, aspens, but it could be highly saturated green, seems, it seems like it has more importance, but actually it's oftentimes a different value, because yellow itself in the color wheel is almost like what white is in terms of value. So certain colors have certain land in certain value range. Oh, if only I had that photo. Let's see. One more time, I'm going to try to find it. Which is this version in black and white. I just took this photo and I changed it to black and white. And it's a way to see the true value. So why is the value important? Value in color, black to white, tonal value. It's because that's the first thing the eye sees. As a viewer, as looking out into the world, we see value before we see color. And the reason is because it gives a sense of dimensionality, three-dimensionality of objects, depths of space. So that's why. And having a greater range of value creates more dynamism in a painting. Not every painting has to have value black to white. It could be different portions of that range, but a greater range has more drama. So I want you to be aware of that. So when you're making choices, in terms of color in your painting, you can not just default to what you see in front of you, but you as a designer, as the artist, can make choices around bringing in more drama or less drama in your painting. Maybe you have enough drama in your life. So there's all the dark areas, the darkest value in my photo. And now I'm moving into the mid dark. I'm filling that area in, which is that mountain in the back. Then mid light. Then I'm leaving the lightest lights. The nice thing about charcoal is that you can also smudge it to soften edges, soften value, stretched out, and color in with your fingers or paper towel. All right, so we get a quick drawing. It's called a value study. And it's a way to get to know what you're about to paint, because sometimes you're discovering, you come to the painting and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know, so now this is the first step. Two blues. I have one yellow. but 2 blues, 2 reds, 1 yellow, and white and black. And I like to put a gloss gel medium in my acrylic paint. And the gloss gel slows down the drying because acrylic dries quickly, especially in our dry weather. And it adds a little gloss to a very matte finish. Acrylic paint dries matte. And it extends the paint. It's the same substance that the paint is made out of. And so I'm using 2 palette knives and I'm just mixing in the gel. The gel is white, but it dries clear. It does add some transparency to your paint. If you have professional grade paint, you can put at least half gel, half pigment. If you have student grade paint, then you want to put a lot less gel because you have a lot less pigment in your paint. So that's a good way to set up. Ooh, that was a pleasant sound. Okay, I'm ready. The reason we have 2 sets of primary colors, and you know that the primary colors are red and yellow and blue, and they create the rainbow, every possible color on the color wheel. And the reason we have 2 sets is one is warm and one is cool. The warm set is the cadmiums, like Fire Truck, True Red, cadmium and ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow. And they create a much more muted landscapey color range. And the cool set, phthalo blue, quinacridone red, or this is alizarin crimson, and the Hansen yellow or a lighter yellow like a cadmium yellow light. Those create the true color of the rainbow, this kind of colors. Really, really highly saturated colors. So with those 2 sets, you can almost do anything. So instead of buying a tube for every color out there, this, you just need to invest in these paints, these colors, and you can mix a huge range. So I'm putting my canvas up. There are many, many ways to start. One way to start painting is to find lines on a white canvas. Other ways are to create a ground, but to find lines. Now, I used to start with charcoal lines, and that's definitely a good way to start. Charcoal itself is chalky and will blend into your paintings. Sometimes that's nice, into your paints. Today, I'm starting with a smaller paintbrush. I'm just mixing a dark color. It really doesn't matter what the color is. Most of these lines will be covered by paint itself, by other colors. So I mixed phthalo blue and a red to create kind of a deep purple. And I added a little bit of water. So most of my paintings, I use very thick acrylic paint. If you want a little more fluidity, a little more like an inky effect, then add more water. And I'm talking about a couple drops, a quick dip, not a water down to watercolor level. And so I'm doing the same thing I did with the charcoal on my canvas. I'm going to find those big lines. And this again is a quick way to find a composition and how the composition, how well it works. What I'm teaching you is like some fundamentals to anything you paint. Find the lines. This is kind of, especially if you're going to abstract from here and you're not going to get tied down to realism or having it have to be a copy of the photo. What's nice is to start with some structure, with a blueprint, with some solid lines. And from there, I feel like that allows for more abstraction. So find a composition that works. I have this mountain peaking right in the middle. Is that what I want? So what I like about this photo, besides the feeling that it evokes in me and the twinkling leaves and the color combination of complementary colors, is that's a lot of things of what I like about it. Was I going to say anything else? Oh, that, you know, I can change it up. I have a square canvas. I can easily crop one side or another. I can easily change. The mountain can move here or here or here. None of these elements have to be exactly like this photo. So here I go. I'm going to find a tip around composition. Oftentimes we talk about 1/3. Is it 1/3 sky, 2/3 sky? You know, how much land? Where's that horizon line? So I'm giving this painting, the mountains are, I moved the mountain over to the left, and I'm giving 1/3 sky here. I'm finding those big shapes again. Oftentimes you do not want to line things smack in the middle. Offset them a little bit. There's lots of rules around why certain compositions work. But this gives me an opportunity, and if I don't like the lines I came up with, I can easily erase them or paint over them with new lines. That's the quality of acrylics, is that it's very forgiving. You can layer, it's opaque, you can layer dark to light, light to dark. That's not true with oil paint. I find these big shapes again. I want to designate the darkest dark and paint that in. It kind of pins, because I have a million lines happening, and that dark value is it as the dark value as dark as I'm putting it down? About, yeah. My color is blue, but the value is correct. And that's the important piece. Okay. Does this design work? I can change it now. Maybe I do want to put that mountain back in the middle. Cool. So we got our basic lines down. Okay, so this is the how to start a painting. That's that phase of the painting. Now we're going to start the middle phase of the painting, which is the actual painting part. So some plein air artists recommend doing your sky next, because what it does is you've set your darkest dark value, shapes. Doesn't this look like an abstract painting already? And now you're going to set one of your lightest lights. The sky is often one of the lightest lights. It might not be the very lightest, but it's over there. And here, if I look at my, I'm going to share my screen again. Compared to that bright yellow, it's about equal between the yellow and the sky. But also interesting looking at this, that yes, there's a lot of bright yellow, but there's also very kind of not very dark, but mid-light value yellow to mid-dark value yellow. So the sky's next. So I'm gonna I oftentimes teach, this is a step-by-step, but I oftentimes teach that it's really intuitive and up to you. What's your next step? And I think after you gain a little experience with acrylic paint, that's where you should do. You should ask yourself, okay, what's the next color I want to pick, and go for it. But because we're breaking it down, we're gonna step it. Now, I see a kind of a phthalo blue sky. It's almost white. Oftentimes in photos we take by ourselves, if we don't have a blue filter on a camera, the sky is almost white. If you don't want a purely white sky, then add a little blue into it. I'm not interested in baby blue. This is not a baby blue wallpaper. So how do you bring some complexity to your blue? You can add a little bit of the other blue in there. You can add a tiny bit of red in there. Whatever you like to give your blue a little more depth. I also like to leave a little streaking inside my paint. So it's not as mixed thoroughly, so it has a little bit of streaks of unmixed paint in it. Because when I pick that up, and I have a tiny canvas, a 12 by 12 inch canvas, and this is a 1-inch brush. It's oftentimes a matter of proportion. The bigger the brush, the less details and more abstraction you're going to be moving towards. This is 1.5 inch, and then I have my 2-inch brush that I love and often use on most of my canvases. So go a slightly bigger. You know, 1-inch brush can do almost anything and everything. It has superpowers. So I'm going to just grab a bunch of this blue and place it in the spaces. I might have to go over some lines, especially tree lines, because some of the in between the leaves, we're going to have some of that blue show. So I want to cover a good portion of where that blue is. If you're working on a stretched canvas, you can paint all the way around. Painting all the way around on the sides and edges of your canvas is great. It's a very contemporary look because you don't have to frame your canvas. You can just hang it as is. So I'm working the paint always around the edge and in the gaps. And I want to leave a little bit of this blue. Now, we'll get into how to use the quantity of paint, I think, in the next stage. Now, I want to mix enough paint that when I load my brush, it's like a 1/4 spoon of paint is sitting on my brush. And again, I'm not interested in flat wallpaper. You're welcome to leave the artist's mark on your canvas. You want to see your brush strokes. So I'm picking up more paint, and I'm picking up, let's see, I loaded my brush, so I'm going to show it to you again. A lot of paint. Is that a 1/4 spoon? About a 1/4 spoon of paint. This is heavy body acrylic paint. It has a lot of substance to it. The gel helps extend it and move it further, but it's the wet on wet technique and effect that is, and gushy, kind of squishy, gushy paint on your canvas that is very satisfying. It does take getting used to if this is your first experience with thick amount of paint. So it doesn't mean I'm leaving a lot of texture necessarily, but a nice thick layer. There's my... Now, oftentimes, and you'll have to see if that's the case in your photograph, but I'm sure you've noticed looking outside, oftentimes the sky at the top is darker than the sky at the horizon line. See if it's applicable to your painting. I like to suggest it in my paintings that there's variations, and that allows, and then you can see if you're adding a little bit of dark to your sky, you can already see the effect of wet on wet paint, that it easily blends. Great, let's move on. So the next part is up to you. Sometimes it's nice to start from one side of the value range and go light to dark. I like to go dark to light. So the next colors I'm going to look for are these dark colors. The dark color in the shadows behind the trees, the forest, the aspen or the pines. And a lot of those are very neutral colors. It's the neutral colors that support that highly saturated yellow color. If I only painted highly saturated pigments, it will be overwhelming to the eye. It's like eating a dessert that's too sweet. But this way, having the complex variety of color, neutral to saturated, creates variety and balance. So I'm finding these colors. And it's a kind of a green, so I'm going to work with blue and yellow. To desaturate, to neutralize your color. So I have this incredibly bright green. I always work with the complementary color. So if it's highly saturated, I add a little bit of the opposite. I like to work in color strings, which is creating a range of colors, starting with one color and adding another color into it. In this case, it's saturation to neutral green. So here's one color. I'm going to start applying paint to my canvas. I've created a range of colors so I can play with them. I'm going to start with the darkest value that's showing in my photo. And I'm going to start applying. Now I'm applying, I'm squinting at my photograph. So what emerges is these big shapes. So I'm applying these big shapes. Big shapes. Big shapes here. They're dark value, big shapes. Is it the exact color? Probably not. Is it the correct value? Close enough. The same way we did with the charcoal. Finding the big shapes. Now my sky is still wet, which means I'm going to have the wet on wet blending happening. And that is a, what did Tom call it? Happy coincidence. So I call it happy accidents, pleasant coincidence. There's so many ways to refer to this, but it's setting you up with the possibility of something lovely happening that you can't really control. But that works. That when you sit back and look at it, you see that it works. So the wet on wet paint creates this blending that happens for you. I've placed a lot of the dark value shapes, and now I'm going to the shapes that are a little bit lighter. So I mixed a little white into my greens, and I continue placing all these incredible variety of greens in the grasses, in the leaves. Oops, I missed a spot. And so this is what my palette looks like right now. I've got my blue sky. I got a variety of greens. Some have a little more red. Some are just more yellow. And every time I wash my brush, I want to wring it dry because I don't want a lot of water in my paint. I want the paint to stay thick. If you like working with water, then try working with a little bit less water in your paint. You're stretching yourself in whatever new direction you are moving in. Okay, I'm going to show one more technique, and then I'm going to let you just focus on your painting and see if there's any questions. Okay, so here's one more technique. It's the wet on wet technique. And we'll use both brush and palette knife techniques. So I'm washing my brush out. I'm going to have a rag handy because I'm using yellow. So I have a lot of paint down. It's a good application, thick application of paint. The sky is still wet. The green behind the leaves portion of it, didn't even finish, is still wet. And now I'm going to add the leaves for the aspens. And so I have this highly saturated yellow, and I'm going to play with it. I'm going to stretch it. I can make it a little green. I can make it a little orange. I'm going to stretch the yellow so it's not all just so bright. Some of it could be a little less bright. So playing with different yellows. I need a lot more right here. Okay, and then some of it could be lighter, adding white. So I've created some colors to play with. Extended getting my crayon box ready to go. What's possible in colors. And I'm going to start by just dipping some of these delicious colors, load up my brush with plenty of paint, and go onto the wet paint. And I'm not going to paint every single leaf here. Again, I'm going to squint and find those general shapes, and also reference my experience of being in the aspens where the leaves are moving and what does that feel like. Be the tree. All right, so wet on wet means that things should blend. The green and the color that I'm adding is blending together. And that is one layer. So the leaves that are furthest away from me are blurry. They're not in 100% focus. So this blurring effect of the colors mixing together and as I'm layering, so some of it is blurred, blended together, and then if I come back with another layer of paint on top of it, it'll be thick. So I can play with that wet on wet to create soft edges, variety of edges. I'll put another layer of even lighter color. So I'm not starting in with the most saturated yellow. I mean, I see a lot of yellow, but this way I can build up the saturation and really control the amount. Here's bright, bright yellow. The amount of brightness. And then the brightness becomes really special against all this muted dark color. So what are these big shapes? How do I want to move my brush to express the movement of the leaves, the movement of the grass, the movement of whatever it is? It's like your handwriting, your brush strokes. It's like your unique signature within the way you are applying the paint. And that's a whole realm of exploration. And what can your paintbrush do? And that's super fun to discover. So I think it's important to find variety in your brush strokes. So not everything looks the same, but there is interest. So sometimes I move my brush short strokes vertically, horizontally, sideways. How many leaves are out here? How big is this mass of leaves? How much space does it take in my photo or on my canvas? If there's too much going on, then control the brush strokes and bring in brush strokes that feel more still. If you feel like everything is kind of still and you want more energy in your brushwork, then come in a little quicker with your brushwork. And keep squinting at that photo. You can even squint at the photo, then at your painting. Where are those big shapes? How do they relate? So let me know if there's any questions. That's the end of our demo. I might, as I'm painting, bring up a couple more things. I'm going back to the feeling of this place and seeing if that feeling can come across in my brushwork. Oh, I did promise to show you palette knife, didn't I? So I love teaching that this is a conversation you're having with your canvas. So if you're in conversation, the canvas is going to tell you when you're done. So if I say, oh my gosh, I have this gorgeous yellow color, and I place it, and then I sit back and look, where else does this color want to go? And I apply a little bit and then sit back and look. And where else does this color want to go? And I apply a little bit and sit back and look, you know, until I find the balance, that sweet spot where the canvas reflects back to me a sense of harmony, a sense of wholeness, a sense of completion. And we were talking, Jill and I were talking the other day, when you feel like you're working, like you're really working, you're working hard to, I mean, and it's not fair because when you're learning, there is, you know, you can be working, but to just work with abstraction, use the bigger brush, and instead of knowing that there's a million leaves there, squint into your photo and find what that weird shape is that makes up all those leaves together. You can always suggest to the viewer that there's leaves by adding a few leaves, and the viewer fills in the gap. Here it is, the palette knife. I did a whole workshop of palette knives only. We got a whole range of palette knives, but my favorites are these. And they're probably my favorites because those are the ones I've been using the most. They're teardrop and they can do a whole variety of things. I'm gonna, small canvas, small palette knife. I'm gonna show you how to make the thing of the tree, the branches and the trunk. I'm mixing a color, whatever that color is. Let's see, this is kind of a browny greeny and it has a dark value. So I'm gonna mix all that together. It's dark. I often do my trees light. This is a lot darker. Okay. So palette knives are meant for mixing paint. Painting knives, which is what this is when it has a bend in it, is meant to be painting with. But I use painting knives for both mixing and painting. I've created a really dark brown. It's fairly neutral. I like to use the easiest way for the technique that I like the most is loading a palette knife on the edge. Color, so I'm hoping you can see it. There we go. So I loaded it by pulling some of that paint. Okay. So for example, trees, I can control the amount of paint I release off the knife by dragging the palette knife and lowering it at the same time. It's a really fun way of painting trees. Another way is loading your palette knife again. I'll do a much lighter color because I think it's hard to see. Kind of a white aspen color. I never use pure white in my paintings, or very rarely, very reserved. You want a variety of what white is. I load my palette knife again on the edge. And I can drag, I can make lines with this. So up, down, and right. And as I'm dragging, I'm lowering so the paint just catches some of it. It kind of like stutters its way onto the canvas. The other easy way to work with a palette knife, especially if you have a lot of thick paint, is to scratch. I can scratch branches in. Again, I feel like nature is not patterned so evenly and controlled. So having things be a little random is closer to nature, what nature does. Right? It's usually man-made lines of things. And then looking at painting the leaves with the palette knife. Ooh, got some blue on there. I can scratch some details, a few details of leaves if I want. Really random little scratchy marks. So I'm loading my palette knife with really light yellow so you can see the very bright sparkly leaves that the sun is hitting. I'm loading the tip of my palette knife this time. And that way it'll make this round mark. So I can do that. I can sprinkle it wherever it belongs. Now, oftentimes I think of painting the movement in a painting kind of like music. So what is that rhythm that you're creating? You know, where does it start? How does it move throughout? Also loading my palette knife and moving it back and forth. Anytime you kind of randomly, or not randomly, but what is it called? There's kind of a loose movement of the wrist with your paintbrush or your palette knife. You create more organic shapes as opposed to the, you know, must get the shape right, controlled. That feels really controlled. But anytime you move your wrist or your whole arm into the painting process, you have that expressive energy that is translated. So I can move this palette knife back and forth, and it creates these kind of playful, loose marks. And I encourage you all to explore that. What can your brush do? What can your palette knife do? In every angle, direction, because that will increase what's possible. Yeah, a greater vocabulary for you in your expression. Great. I'm going to do palette knife grass. So yeah, I think Jill and I were talking, if you feel like you're working, it's an uphill battle, you're working, then maybe step away and find again why you're painting, kind of the joy of it, the exploration. So palette knife can create so many fun textures. There is topography when you layer like frosting a cake, palette knife. And the other important piece is to keep sitting back or standing back and looking at your whole painting. The viewer doesn't obsess about any one area like the painter usually does. The viewer looks at the whole. What is the impact of the whole painting? So keep standing back and seeing where am I in this painting? How does the eye move through the painting? What's calling me? What do I like? What don't I like? So we're going to continue painting for another 17 minutes. And then we will stop to see how everybody's doing and if there's any other questions.
So, Lael,
Answers to that question. One of them is edges. So things that are, it's called atmospheric perspective. Things that are really far away. You've seen those photos, or we've been hiking where the mountains are in layers. And as they move back, they get grayer, bluer, right? They fade in color. Atmospheric perspective means that the things that are farthest away have more atmosphere between me and that. So the color is washed out in a blue-gray. Unless, you know, we have smog, and then so that's a different color, and then it's the atmosphere puts a filter on. So the color needs to be a little more muted than the things in the foreground. Things in the background have softer edges, they're smaller, they are less saturated, more neutral color. Things that are closer are sharper, are more saturated, are bigger. So that's one way of seeing the difference between things that are far and things that are close. So keeping that in mind, what colors would set back? If you place them next to the colors that you have in the foreground, would they pop forward? Would a purple pop forward? Or does it need to be muted enough to sit back in space? So colors move like that. They create space and they move between them, but it's all relative to what you put next to it. If you don't care if the thing is sitting back, then you can put any color you want. But if it's important to you that it feels far away, then it's the value and the color. And So in this case, I didn't have a mountain, so I want to put my mountain in here. Now in my photo, it looks like the value is a lot darker than the yellow leaves, but I know that it's kind of a mid-dark. It's not as dark as my moon seems to think because we looked at the black and white photo. So I'm going to mix a color. It is blue, but what kind of blue? How saturated is this blue? So let's try different things. If I put a highly saturated, also cool and warm sets back in space as well. Usually warm color moves forward, cool color sets back. There's a lot of principles you can use, but ultimately you need to just try it and see what does your eye tell you. So here's a highly saturated blue. Okay, so what is that color doing in the space?
No, it definitely.
So now if I desaturate it, right, if I make it both, is the value correct? The value is a little dark. If I put the complementary color, which is orange, so if I throw some orange into my blue a little bit at a time, because I don't want it to go green. It can still read as blue, but what kind of blue? I need to, that's a lot of paint. I'm going to scrape a little bit of it off. Palette knife can do. On. So now I'm going to add this less saturated blue. It might still need to be a little lighter. So let's make this mountain bigger. Great. So now I have a different kind of blue back there. So then I'm going to throw some of these yellows on top of it. So yeah, experiment with that. What color looks good and still works in terms of space? And also the edge of the thing furthest away sometimes blurs just a little. And wet on wet allows for that blur to occur. So, or if everything is almost, if one color is wet and the other, the layer underneath it is dry, you can just take a clean brush and make it it's a little wet, and drag the edge of the paint, blend it together, and suddenly it becomes a soft edge. And the soft edge is like when it's fuzzy, when it's blended, and it disappears a little into what's behind it. Make this. And acrylic is so forgiving. You can paint the background and then the foreground and then the foreground and then the background. It doesn't matter what order you paint in. So even after I painted all these leaves, I can still paint some sky. It's called sky windows. I can add the little blue of the sky if I've missed, if I put too many leaves and I want more sky to show through. I oftentimes don't use pure black. I often add another color to it. Black itself, like ivory black, can feel like a black hole. But if you add color to it, so if I'm using black, I can throw a little blue into it, and suddenly it's a cool black. Or I can throw a little red into it, and suddenly it's a warm black. There was a phase in my workshops that I made all the students mix their own blacks. And you can't mix like a pure black that comes out of a tube, but you can mix a deep charcoal color. And so it gives the painting, first of all, it fits in the painting better, and it gives the painting more dimension to have an interesting black as opposed to a flat black. It's completely up to you. Try using black. The emphasis it gives is powerful. To push tonal value to that level. But the tip is throw in another color as well. That's true for white too. Oftentimes it's recommended not to.
Lael.
So knowledge and experience go hand in hand. So you gain some information and then you need to try it out. See if you like it, how it applies to you, how it applies to this painting. Where do you find yourself falling back to your patterns that you know? And where are you willing to take a risk to try something else? I'm having fun with my sky windows, having them be a different color in every window. Tree windows, yeah. So it's in the experimentation that you're going to discover something new. And in our share, I'd love to hear if that happened. Did you discover anything new? So as you're working, keep sitting back and looking at the whole thing, and how the whole thing is emerging at once. You don't want to get stuck in any one area, perfect that spot, and then have nothing happen in the rest of the painting. You want the whole canvas to arise with the same amount of intention throughout. The nice thing about painting or abstracting what you're seeing, it's called abstract realism, is that it doesn't have to make logical sense. You can break all the laws of nature in your paintings. What it does have to make is visual sense. It just has to feel good. Somehow it has to feel good, even if the laws of nature are from another planet. Everything is skewed, right? But the whole thing together has to present a reality that feels good to look at.